I guess we are live. I guess we are live. And after my second round of starting streaming, this is the best thing I'm trying to do. I'm going to react to this STLab Better Code PR by Dave Abrahams. And this thing is regarding the contract chapter. If someone doesn't know about this thing, what is this better code? They should know about this guy, Sean Parent. Sean Parent is a legend. Sean Parent started with this idea of how to write better code, and he did a lot of talks. And now what he's trying to do is he's trying to write a book on it, right? So he's trying to write a book. Now for that book, there is so many people trying to contribute to chapters, and one of the person is Dave Abrahams. Dave Abrahams, if you do not know about him, himself is a legend. Dave Abrahams is the one who advocates for mutable value semantics. Dave Abrahams is the one who says why contracts are important and they are bread and butter for any programmer, right? And he advocates for design by contract. Now, for that reason, he is taking forward this chapter by opening this PR of contract chapter. Now, coming to the reaction, right? There are so many conversation, like 210 conversation happening here. So you might be aware that if this is the amount of conversation, how much cool this conversation would be, because this conversation is done by four people. The first one is, of course, the author Dave Abrahams, the legend. The second one is again a legend, Sean Parent, a very good friend of him. The third one is a David Senkel, another person in STLab team, and the fourth one is Nick DeMarco. Apologies. Okay, it's Nick DeMarco, and he did a really great thing in Photoshop. Like I think if I know about him, he did this some of the asynchronous development thing. There is no. I only know one major talk of him in CPCon or CPP now, and that was regarding generic programming. But I was really affectioned by his talk, and yeah. So I am going to review all of it, and believe me, I have went through this book and at least this chapter, and yeah, this chapter is really nice, but the comments are even nicer, and how Dave Abrahams responds to it is even legendary. So let's start and be excited, really be excited, because this is something everyone needs. This is something you should be excited about. This is something that might change your way of thinking about programming. So let me start about that. One thing I would do is I would actually leave these kind of comments, right? The comments that do not have any reply at all, because these kind of comments are something Dave saw and he found that okay, it's fine. Let me change it. The comments that have replies is are the comments where there are the points of debate, and we are really interested in those debates because I have read the chapter myself at least you know 4 or 5 revisions back. So I have a blurry context of what exactly is going on. So I would try to give that context, and yeah, that's the thing. For example, write off and throws out the baby with the bathwater are the idioms that may be difficult to follow for non-native English speakers to read. I suggest rewording without use of these idioms, and those are the right comments, right? So that's fine. Let me go down. And let's start with this one. I am a big fan of this comment, to be honest. But first let me explain what exactly is happening here in the chapter. So the chapter has a subsection, and the chapter is trying to say which code to blame. Like with design by contract, you can actually say which code to blame. Make sense? Now, here is the Dave logic. He says when something goes wrong in the software, focusing on which person to blame is counterproductive, but deciding which code to blame is the first step. Contracts tells us which code needs fixing, right? So this is what Dave's logic is. And let me tell you what is that thing. If preconditions are not satisfied, that's a bug in the collar, right? Because if preconditions are not satisfied and callers calls the function, that is a bug in the caller, and that means caller has a bug, not the callee function. The function is not required to make any promises in that case. If preconditions are satisfied but post conditions are not fulfilled, that's a bug in the callee or in something it calls, right? So that is the thing. I think this is something nice, and I love this thing. This is how I think about the software. This is why I love design by contract. Now, David Senkel came with the point that contracts tells us which code needs fixing. He said, once I believed this, but have since realized it's a logical fallacy. The contract, like the code itself, can be defective. The most you can say is that there is a contradiction between the contract and either the implementation or the caller. Contracts allow you to identify the presence of bug, but not where. And this is true. You, if you think about it, if there is a difference between contract and the code, you don't know what exactly is the problem. Like if the code has the problem or the contract has the problem, right? So he says that this thing is a fallacy. And if you do not know what fallacy, fallacy means a logical false statement. Now, Dave Abrahams says there is no fallacy at all. If there is a contradiction between the contract and the implementation, the callee has a bug. And that is a very precise statement. The maintainer of the callee has two choices then: update the implementation to match the contract, updating the contract, and maybe the updating implementation too, and auditing or updating all the clients. In general, though, option 2 is not available, and the best you can do is hope clients followed the contract so everything becomes consistent when you take option 1, right? Uh, in any case, that is the only choice that scales. So option 1 is the one that scales. And responsibility falls entirely on the maintainer of the callee to address the problem. Crystal clear. And this is why Dave Abrahams is a legend. He goes like that. If there is a callee and there is a caller, caller would see the contracts of callee, right? And based on that, they would write their code. Now, if the contract, uh, the maintainer of callee, uh, what they can do is they can update the implementation to match the contract, right? Because caller depends on those contracts. So this is the point Dave has. And then he goes, please either resolve the conversation or add something. Thanks. Here David Senkels comes and says your argument rests on the premise that the contracts is an infallible source of truth. In practice, the contract is human artifact, just as prone to bugs as the code itself. Consider the case, the common scenario where all code is initially correct. Okay, a developer rewrites the function contracts for clarity, but unintentionally alters its meaning. The implementation and all its color remains unchanged. Later, another developer sees the discrepancy. Following the principle that contract is a law, they update the implementation to match the new faulty contract. This change breaks every color of the function, causing production issues. After step 2, the implementation perfectly matches the contract. By your logic, the bug must reside in every single of its color. However, common sense tells us the problem was introduced by faulty contracts. Contract change is step 1 and propagated by misguided fix to implementation is step 2. The true solution is to fix both the implementation and the contract back to their original correct state. This demonstrates my original point. A mismatch only tells you there is a problem, not where bug is. Now, if you think about it, this is actually correct, right? This is actually correct. This happens a lot. I don't know. Uh, I have to say this does not happen a lot, and many people just do not write contracts clearly. So bad. And yeah, so first start writing contracts and then you can get into these kind of legendary situations, the situations that needs debate. Anyways, so uh David Senkel has a point that the code was correct and the contract was correct, but someone decides to actually change that for more clarity. But now with the clarity they introduced a bug, and every of its caller is unaware of that change, right? Because above, Dave Abraham said that updating the contract is not a scalable thing. So the client did not know about it, and then someone actually saw the new contract and they were like, okay, Collie has a bug because now contract has some discrepancy, and they changed the implementation. And now the implementation is changed and every caller of the function breaks, right? Because this approach does not scale at all, as Dave Abraham said. So yeah, this is a logical thing, this is a practical thing I'm thinking of, and now I am really curious how Dave responds. And your argument rests on the premise that the contract is infallible source of truth. Dave Abrahams, calm and cold, just replies, no, it does not. Why? After step 1, the function has a bug. That is objectively true. When I wrote the contract, tell you which code needs fixing, I didn't mean they do so in isolation. It's the it's in the context of implementation. Maybe I should not have used the word code. I could have said contracts tell you whether the caller or callee needs fixing. Would that satisfy you? Okay. I am going to cover this scenario in a section on contract evolution. Oh, nice. Okay, we are going to have a section because this section was not present when I actually read uh, the chapter. So I think it's worth it to read this chapter live on the stream again, describing it as a way you can break the ability of contracts to tell us what code needs to be changed. Okay, describing it as a way you can break the ability of contracts to tell us what code needs to be changed. I'm also going to rephrase contracts tell us which code needs fixing as contract tell us where bugs are. Okay. Okay, code. Okay. I'm getting the point. I'm getting the point. Uh, so code and contract, because contract is usually the documentation, right? So, okay, that is objectively true. If you change a function and its documentation in a way that breaks all clients, they all have bugs now, and the function is not buggy, but it still needs to be fixed. Wow, what? That is objective to, if you change a function and its documentation in a way that breaks all client, they all have bugs now, and the function is not buggy, but it still needs to be fixed. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here's the thing: the function is not buggy because function has a contract and the implementation matches the contract, so the function is not buggy, but the client breaks. Wow. uh, this is so nice, and here comes the legendary answer. uh, okay, yep. And I have to say, I am seeing this that the Dave Abraham's logic says that contracts change in contracts are usually not scalable. There are really good way of changing contracts, and I know that strengthening the precondition and weakening okay no weakening the precondition and strengthening the post condition is the way to change the contract. That is the backward compatible way. The other way around just breaks. So yeah, that is the way of evolution of contracts. I think I will try to see in the next stream if he writes the same in the contract evolution section. Okay, you can define where the bug is however you want, but if it does not align with which code needs fixing, it is a categorization without utility. Okay, you can define where the bug is however you want, but if it does not align with which code needs fixing, it is a categorization without utility. Okay, so now he's saying, okay, so document plus function. So Dave said document plus function has a bug, but now David Senkel has a point that if we do not know which code needs fixing, we have a thing, but we do not have a use case of it. But now Dave Abrahams came and said, I disagree. I love it. I love it. It's a judgment you can make about a piece of code without regard to context or the history of the project. Okay, it's a judgment you can make about a piece of code without regard to context or the history of the project. It's not the whole picture, but it's a judgment you can make by reasoning locally. Nice. And that is a good thing about local reasoning, right? In the local reasoning, you can reason locally about the code. Small accessible steps are valuable. Also, even though you can come up with a scenario where it does not indicate what needs to be changed, in practice, there is very strong correlation. Wow, this is something. Small accessible steps are valuable. Also, even though you can come up with a scenario where it does not indicate what needs to be changed, in practice there is a very strong correlation. If you look at what has a bug and suddenly all 5 clients of particular functions are buggy, you have a strong indication that you want to look at the history of that function. Okay, so now this is a really important point by Dave Abrahams, I think. What he's saying, that you had a collie and you had, let's say, 5 callers, and everything was working well, and suddenly you change the collie and still it's not buggy and the callers are buggy. You might want to see that what was the history of that particular function, right? So I agree, in practice there is a very strong correlation. I agree. So instead of contracts tell us where the bugs are, say contracts gives us a good signal of where the bugs are. And here David Senkel is actually asking to be really verbose here. And yeah, let me see what Dave says. Too wordy, and I do not believe it adds anything. Classic Dave. Removing the needless words, you get contracts, signal where the bugs are, and signal will not read differently from tells us. Okay, because the reader has not been through this debate with us. Very nice. This is very nice. And he's saying because this is a PR on the book, right? This is a book they are trying to write, and a reader would actually go through the book, but not through this debate we that is there in this PR. And we are doing this. We are actually looking into this debate. So yeah, it will just read as an odd choice of word. Okay, it is true that you can evaluate whether there is a bug in the function just by looking at that function and documentation of first thing it uses. Whether there is a bug in a function just by looking at that function and the documentation of things it uses. Uh, that is why people use the word bug. If you if I hand you a function and I ask, is this buggy? You do not say, show me the rest of the system and then I will tell you. This is really precise. This is what is local reasoning, right? I want to see a function, and if I want to get to know if it is buggy, I do not want to see the rest of the function. The bad thing about the production code bases is this is what they expect us to do. See what everything is doing, and you know why AI cannot do good things. That's an unscalable response, and if the function is in a library, it may be impossible to answer. That is so true. Okay, I do not have language to talk about bugs introduced in client by the kind of change you are talking about. Okay, other than to say it's a bad change. Okay, I do not have language to talk about bugs introduced in clients by kind of change you are talking about, other than to say it's a bad change. Okay, it's a bad change. That is a nice thing. It is true that if you know there are no new clients since the change, you can simply revert the bad change. If you do not, it's much more complicated. Does this code have a bug? Is a simple question that can be answered without regard to history, and I am not going to complicate it just to cover this. It loses all power if I do. I do plan, as I have said, to treat the kind of change you are talking about. And I really like this direction, right? This direction is really good to have. To be honest, I want to see if that revision is in the progress, and I would do that reading on the stream. Okay. Nick DeMarco is here. Okay. When do contracts fail to tell us where the bugs are? If such cases exist, okay, when do contracts fail to tell us where when do contract fail to tell us where the bugs are? If such contracts exist, I agree a change to text is warranted. Perhaps contract helps us find which code needs fixing as an early hedge with a clarifying paragraph after food gun that explains the cases that you both seem to be alluding to here. Right, this is so nice. Nick came and Nick says, okay, uh, when do contracts fail to tell us where the okay, and then Dave Abrahams came and he said, never in my view. This has everything to do with the way you interpret the word bug. In the cameo's view, apparently bug means something like the code that needs to change in order to make the system work, and may depend on the history of the project. I'm not sure, but I may also include inappropriate naming and other things I view as quality of code issues. In my view, Does it have bug is a property of single function that you can evaluate statically. I think my view aligns with the people use the word. Wow, this is so nice. This is so nice. Uh, and if you think about what Dave is saying and what David Senkel is saying, he clearly explains the difference, right? Dave Abrahams is to the point that a bug, what is the definition of the bug? And for him, a bug is something that he can even reason about locally. But for David, he's actually thinking about the whole system. So, yeah, thinking about whole system is really hard when we are talking about, you know, a single thing. Uh, but nice to see what exactly is happening, right? Uh, I am really excited because I would not say that the use case of to make the system work is some imaginary use case. It's a real use case, right? We want our system to work. This is you know all what all startups are doing. But if we go in the direction of what Dave is saying, we have to be really really precise in everything, and that's a good thing. So what I got from this debate is, I want to reason about a function, and if that function is correct, it does not have a bug. The callers might have a bug and actually have a bug, and that was because the function had a bad change, and I think that bad change is non-backward compatible changes, and I am predicting that what they would bring is, if you change a contract such that you the change is not following the line that you are weakening the precondition and strengthening the okay, what I said, weakening the post condition and strengthening the precondition, then that change is not backward compatible and would break, and that is a bad change. So I am thinking that he would bring this thing into the evolution contract evolution section in the book. So this book is really nice to read. Like, if anyone is not reading this book, uh I don't know what they are doing. Yep. Anyways, okay. I think this word gives wrong impression. There are many subtle cases one must watch out for. Your example in C++, for example, would need to handle the case where the first append throws exception. Another subtle, fairly common fairly common case is related to callers provide user-defined callbacks. Nice. The exception case is handled in the third bullet. If even if you have the wrong rule, better code says invariants need to be upheld when mutation fails, but the that is a topic for the errors chapter, which comes next. Yes, this is the errors chapter. Like, you know I have seen people uh, writing try catch all over the code base, and they are really afraid that what happens when this exception would come and you know try catch everywhere. And I'm not that kind of person. I am that kind of person who hates that. I'm like, okay, you are doing defensive programming, but what are you defending against? That means you do not know what exactly is the problem you are trying to solve, and you might want to know that. So because I have gone through the definition of error by Sean and Dave, I know that in the error they would say, if we cannot satisfy the post condition when the precondition of the function is not satisfied, that might be classified as an error, right? That is an error. And it should not be like, okay, you could not satisfy and you do not signal it. You have to signal it. If you are not signaling it, then that is a bug, but in the callee. And if the precondition itself is not satisfied, that is a bug in the caller. So this is how we reason about the things, right? And if there is a bug in the caller, you do not have to make any guarantees about that, right? So I have seen people writing so many if checks, like if this is not null, if this is null, and all of this. They are actually doing this defensive programming approach, and yeah, they are actually afraid. But what I'm saying is, if this is null and you do something, it does not make your program bug free. It just, you know, deviates bug from one place to other place. That's it, nothing else. So yeah, let me go next. What was this one? I'm assuming a meaning of zip is commonly understood in Swift, Swift ecosystem. Uh, maybe not as much as map, but more than collection of one. It's a basic part of standard library. This one is nice. This one is nice. This is funny. Okay. Uh, so correctness game. You need documentation. Undocumented software is neither correct nor incorrect. It does something, but does it do the right thing? There is no way to know. Okay, this is something. This is a good thing to debate. So does it do the right thing? This, because I know what they would be debating about is what actually software is doing, what's the motive of software. So this is the core level things, right? But what actually we want to achieve from software. So for example, if this is a health software and it is not satisfying the use case of the health software, the whole software can be bug free, but it's useless, right? So this question is too general. Many users have an opinion on whether or not a piece of software does the right thing, and this is only tangentially related to correctness. Okay, it is theoretical question, and unless you have some other suggestion, I have no idea what to do with your critique. Okay, nice. Wow, it is a pure cinema. It is a pure cinema. I don't know uh, why people do not do GitHub scrolling in their free time. If you are not doing it, you are missing so much. Yeah. So Cameo, please let me know if you have anything to add. So David Senkel added, my suggestion is to clarify whether or what you mean by doing the right thing, because the phrase conflicts two different concepts: correctness and utility. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. Correctness is about the code correctness, and utility is about the use case that software was meant to be. So correct. Oh, and it might be totally opposite what David said. Let's see. Correctness. Are we building the right thing right? Okay, you cannot know if software is correct without a specification to verify it against. In this sense, documentation is essential, and documentation is what we call a specification, right? So yeah, documentation is essential. If someone says uh, documentation is not there and they have done the good code, basically they did nothing. They are just wasting your time. Okay, utility. Are we building the right thing? This is a question about whether the software actually solves users problem, and that is what I was talking about. Documentation is a poor tool of for answering this thing. That is good. The best way to find out is to put the software in front of users and get their feedback. This is all nice, right? When you try to write a software in the industry, it might or might not solve the problem of clients, and you have to give your software to the clients and ask them if it is actually satisfying that, and that does not come from documentation. So this is a valid point from my thing. A program can be 100% correct according to its documentation, but have zero utility because the documentation specifies a useless feature. All of this is correct. This one is another good thing, right? The last debate was really code way, and this was the utility thing. My original critique was the question, does it do the right thing, is ambiguous. My point now is that documentation only helps answer a narrow question of correctness. not the more important question of utility. I would much rather have a useful program that has a few bugs than a correct program that is completely useless. I don't know if Dave is going to be pissed off with this. Okay, let's see. Sorry, I do not believe it's the least bit ambiguous in this context. We are clearly talking about correctness. Yeah, I think design by contract is about correctness. It's not about utility. Utility is I don't know. It goes to the product manager level or something. I do not know. Okay. The most important thing is that the reader is not confused. I found the phrasing momentarily confusing, though I may be an exception. I suggest getting another take or two to be certain, and then make the final call. At the rate Sean Parent the legend, and Nick DeMarco, what's your read on this question? I agree with Dave Abrahams. I think it's clear we are talking about correctness here. At most, we might put a footnote clarifying the distinction between utility and correctness, but I do not think that's necessary. I think this is a really good way of writing a book. When you are writing a book, these kind of critiques that might feel is uh, might feel useless, right? Because this is a design by contract is a code level thing, and utility is kind of related, but yeah. So, but these critics are important because how a reader perceives the book is a very important thing. But these kind of debate is really something I loved because uh, this debate, oh my goodness, is something everyone should think about. This is how two people are discussing how to reason about the code, and I love this. Okay, let's go down. Okay. Hmm. Wow. I think it would be useful for the reader to roadmap of where this chapter is headed. It's hard to know whether the text is going to be middle of it. I'm suggesting something like first we are going to look at the history of contracts, then I will come back to this. Thanks. Okay. I know lots of people recommended doing this sort of thing, but I loathe these. Here is what we are about to do slides, so I find them very hard to write. I am also having trouble with the ending, thinking of cutting it. It would be a big help if there was some specific suggested changes. I suggest pasting the chapter into AI, feeding it my suggestion, and looking at output of four ideas. Oof, okay. Resolving as I wrote something. Hope it fits the bill. That's fine. That is fine. Uh, okay, it would be a great idea to identify and document the whole program invariant. It is not clear to, okay, this is a great idea according to me too. It is not clear to me why this is a great idea, where this documentation would go and who would use it. Okay. uh, wow. It's a great idea so that the maintainers know they have to uphold it and can rely on it. You'd put it in some top level implementation documentation, right? Are you seriously suggesting that a program that has an undocumented whole program invariant is not improving by documenting it? Okay, yeah, this is nice. This is nice. I don't know if I can go to this line or something 508 and 509. I would like to go and see what was there because wow, this was actually so nice. I think we are talking about having invariant for the whole program, and currently I tried to write invariant for each and every function, but invariant for the whole program is something that is hmm, really nice to have. Okay, so 508 using documentation comment. Okay, okay, in variant. Hmm, I think we cannot search it like that because there has been so much change after I did the first reading of this chapter. So yeah, I think I would cover this in the stream where I would actually do the current reading of this chapter. What is the current version of it after all these changes? Anyways, we can go further. And even better idea is to encapsulate the invariant in the type. Okay, that's fine. I would actually just skip all the comments that does not have any reply because it has it was just resolved by Dave. Okay, so the employees for the company. Oh, this was a great example. This is a really great code example. So do you want to say something about cycles? So also most companies have employees without managers like a CEO or something. So this is about a example of database where we have every employee should have a manager kind of thing, that kind of relationship we are talking about, and we are thinking that how we can reason about the whole thing uh, using design by contract. So I no, I do not want to say something about cycles. I used to have a remark that CEO gets to be their own manager, but I took it out. It is not crucial to be the example because it fits the invariant as stated. It's not clear to me whether it's more helpful or distracting. For what it's worth, I was distracted by this design. I would want to see tighter invariants for real world example. Without that, this example seems artificial. And that is so good because when you are writing a book, the example should not be artificial, right? You should feel like, okay, this book is doing something that might be helpful for my real world program. Like, yeah. So I don't have a real world example to hand. The example is sufficient to illustrate the point, and any real world example should be at least as simple. I could maybe come up with something using integers for dates or string for UIDs. All of them are going to start with a bad design because the whole point is to illustrate improvement. I'm going to resolve this because I do not know what else to do. Feel free to unresolve and pull in our colleagues for backup if you disagree. That is fine. Another, okay, yeah, this one is. Hmm. If you want to use realloc as an example, you should give its semantics. I do not think people are familiar with the three different things. So this is not adding anything to the conversation for most folks. Okay, a classic example, the C library is realloc function, which does the least three different things, all of which needs to be described. Okay, I believe I have fixed this now. Okay, fine. That is fine. I do not really want to use realloc. I'm still searching for good examples. That is fine. Hmm. The method bodies are collapsed because contracts are not uh, about what you put in the implementations. Contracts are part of your function interface. Omit the needless word. Why do you think? Okay, again, nice thing. Why do you think these words are needless? The point that contracts are part of function interface is not made anything anywhere else. Okay, I think everything said here is obvious based on what is said prior. So felt it redundant. I do not strongly feel. I do not feel strongly about this. I don't either, but it's not obvious to me that it's obvious. Sean Parent, any opinion? Uh, Nick DeMarco thoughts. Okay, Sean Parent did not give any opinion, and Nick DeMarco said then it should be made sooner. In my opinion, if it is, I agree with Camus that we can just remove this. It is not. It is not as I just said. So where should I make it, Nick DeMarco? In my opinion, just right before which code to blame. You are coming right off the point that contract establishes relationships. Seems like a reasonable place to make the connection between relationships and interfaces. That is nice. Hmm. It is not clear what comparison means here. It would be better to refer R in increasing order. Yes. Okay. Uh, Okay. In this section, you are starting with an example and then improving it. As a reader, it would have been great to have had this context. I saw all kinds of problem with your initial version, thinking that I needed to set you straight, not the effect you are going for, I presume. Well, the original of this example was not improved much, and the improvements I make in the current text are invalid. So maybe setting me straight would be a good idea. This sort of example does not work as is, but I am not convinced it is not salvageable. I spent some time trying to work through what axioms the comparison must obey, such that not of R is strict weak ordering. There is something here. There is something here. Keep in mind, not R of xy, but it's not R of xy. It's but not R of yx. This is some nice example. Like this is something great, and I know they have it helps to draw pictures. If it's strict weak ordering r of xy in this shape, then not of r of yx has the same shape, except that there is bidirectional arc between all members and equivalence classes, including the self loops. Sean and I just discovered that this thing has a name. After all, it's a total pre-order. To validate that, I was trying to prove to myself that there was always bidirectional arcs between any two members of equivalence class, as would be required to be inverse of that picture. The strong connectedness property of total preorders implies that there is an arc in at least one direction. But it turns out that if you would leave the other direction out, the target element is in a different equivalence class. You would rearrange the elements graphically to show that, but it's topologically the same, so the property is satisfied. The article even mentions this. We, of course, do not want to do that, because the whole point of transformation from the contract is to reverse the order of those arguments and undo the negation in the post condition. So this total pre-order thing, I think this is something nice to even look after, and we might want to explore what total pre-order is and what is this example about, right? So yeah. So you use so a lot in this chapter. I suggest using variations or omitting it so it does not stand out so much. Yes, this section especially needs to be rewritten. It is still in talks form, but I will leave this so conversation open for addressing when the whole chapter is more complete. That makes sense. Hmm. I don't think this is a good example either. Good practice would have trailing white space non-existent in a repository, and tooling should enforce it uh, without developers having to do anything about it. And every file with a new line, to not strip trailing white space from lines you are not editing. It creates spurious VC dips. I will remove both of these because they are continuous, but people use all kind of tools and some cannot be made to do that. The point was just to show the kind of things that might go in such a document, not to endorse any of them. That is fine. Okay. uh, okay, by consequence this function name is also implicitly part of function contract. Yeah, this one was nice. I had gone through this conversation actually. I think this warrants further discussion, especially how it can facilitate omitting additional needless words. Consider, for example, a function called length on a container. I disagree that it should be discussed. However, I do not know where you are going with length. I do not I don't think I want to say that the name is a part of contract. It's definitely true that the name can be incorrect because they suggest the wrong thing. However, in general, I cannot make a complete evaluation of function's correctness based on its name, nor can I write tests that puts the name in a very different category from precondition and post conditions. Okay, okay, that makes sense. If names can be incorrect, then they can be communicating wrong information redundant with the contract documentation. Consider Swift array contains function and it returns a boolean value indicating whether the sequence contains the given element. The contract is entirely implied by the name and the signature of function and therefore redundant. Why are we okay with this redundancy when it occurs? That is a different question, but okay. So we are taking this Swift thing and we have a contains method for the collection, and we want to say that having the contract summary like this one makes sense or not. And according to me, it makes sense. It makes sense to have this kind of redundancy. This is redundant, but it's fine because it would help you to realize if there is a inconsistency between the name, the contract, and the implementation. So first, I do not love the doc. There does not tell me whether the bool is going to be true if the element is contained, and there is other redundancy there. Boolean value. I meant come on, and they dash. Okay, left out the parameter name. So of course they cannot use it in summary, and that's not even the valid Swift function signature. It needs to at least this I want. So function uh, returns true if and only if x is can be found in self. Anyway, now I got off got that off my chest. The point is that name do not reliably communicate everything that you need to know and can sometimes have wrong implication or if not be easily misinterpreted. They count, but the contract gives us the place to say something complete and unambiguous about the contract, right? uh, I think it would be useful to call that out in text. I think the key point is that using the function name alone to communicate semantics works in so few situations that it's a better practice to spell it out in prose every time. However, back to the example, contains why use two different wordings for the same thing. I would argue the return value is implied in the name of the function. If you were instead to write this, okay, I would say that function has a bug. Either rename the function to not contains or make it return true when the element is contained in the array. Therefore, in this case, the function name plus signature is redundant with the documentation comment. It is intentional when you use exactly the same wording. The documentation very often seems tautological, and saying a thing two different ways helps a reader be sure they understand what's being said. Implementation documentation tests, and I guess the name too is the idea. The idea is to say things different ways so you can validate one against the other. Redundancy is necessary. I guess this is all good. The first person tense, okay, the latest comment always says how far I have gotten. Okay, that is fine. This one is fine. This is fine. Again, this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. Yeah, this. Oh, whoa. Okay, this is something new changes since you reviewed, last viewed. Uh, okay, 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 okay. Hmm. In this section, you are starting with an example and then improving it. As a reader, I would have been great to see. I think I have read this thing, right? I have read this thing. Yeah, I have read this thing. From the code review, there are so many more things. Let's see. Let them roll. Load. Hmm. Okay, to make this contract more approachable, uh, sort the elements so that all adjacent pairs satisfy the total pre-order. Okay. Uh, could we add a brief intuitive explanation of total pre-orders up front? I am concerned that requiring developer to click through the Wikipedia article creates a high cognitive load for understanding the 90% use case. Adding a simple analogy, like for context, a total pre-order can be thought as a generalization of arithmetics less than or equal to would make contract easier to use correctly, saving the time and helping to prevent bugs. Nice. This is a very good session. It could save time maybe if you'd use a GitHub session button. Uh, in general, may, it could save time maybe if you would use GitHub session button in general. It's much easier. Okay, GitHub session button. Okay, I don't know what is it. In general, it's much easier for an author to deal with specific sessions like this one than bare critiques. Uh, Often I have found the words that the critic comes up with are surprisingly palatable and easy to integrate when I can only think of things that involve major changes and lots of complexity. Okay, partial review. Submitting these comments and will add more tomorrow. When okay, it was 3 weeks ago. Okay, I'm not sure I forgot to make this comment or if it was lost or resolved problem with too long a review period, but what allows to use composition rule in practice is the consequence rule, rule that allows us to strengthen the precondition and weaken the post conditions. So we can, and that is so nice. So we can get a matching queue to compose. I don't think you need any special rules for that. I do not think uh, we want to mention it. First, precondition, postcondition in whole triples are not given by the operation. The triple is simply valid or invalid. So there is nothing pre-existence to strengthen or weaken. It's mere work that associates the strongest intended precondition with an operation. Furthermore, even if that were wrong, the normal rules of logic work. The weaker statement is implied by a stronger statement. Weaker statement is implied by a stronger statement, yes, and you can use that to draw conclusions about the triple's validity. I'd like to resolve this. Do we need to debate at this point? Okay, we should state the while rule formally. You may want to mention the while rule for total correctness as well. The formalization is long, introducing the idea of loop variant t is strictly decreasing with a finite domain to prove termination. Then we would just be missing the conditional rule to cover whole completely. If this is getting too much, we could mention that we will cover this in more detail in algorithm chapter, which might be a better place. I'm dubious that we want to do get into the while rule for the total correctness at all. The book is supposed to be a smallish and practical. The detail of whole are much less powerful for everyday programming than design by contract is, and it's mostly introduced here to show the formal reasoning one does with whole is one continuum with normal activities. The conditional rule is pretty obvious, and I do not think a complete coverage of whole is going to benefit our readers and might well turn a lots of people off. I do think loop invariants are especially important for algorithms, and I figure you would cover that in algorithm chapter. So since loops are so central, that is actually true. I think covering the whole logic here uh, might or might not be great. So in terms of, I can say in terms of really good theory material, okay, it's a great thing. But in terms of a practical book, people who are not great in theory might not relate to this. So Sean Penn would like to resolve this. Do we need to debate this point? I agree with this. I presume there is some specialized work available who are interested in treatment. I am concerned that every time we introduce a formalism, yeah, this is a formalism, we lose readers that would otherwise benefit from the rest of this chapter. Yeah, formalism is something like if we are going to introduce so much formalism, we have to realize that that book should be intended to be formal. And uh, do not get me wrong, the formal books are really great. They are often the books I usually read, but I before reading I know that book is going to be really formal, and I need pen and paper to actually reason about that book, because my mind uh, is not very simple, very good to think about the formal things, right? Anyways, usually this is phrased before entering the loop and after each iteration, including the last. Is that better? All the information is applied by my phrasing. Sean Bump, maybe before and after each iteration, including the first. Sure can, but the question is that better? If so, why? Including the first is redundant. Hmm, makes sense. I think. Uh, okay. I suggest pasting each chapter. Uh, okay. I think I read that one. Your argument rests on the premise that contract is infallible. Even I read this one, right? It looks like some of the text was accidentally removed near this line. But to continue this discussion, my point was not that you did not cover all the cases. It was that it does not take much attention is inaccurate. In my experience, it takes significant attention to do this correctly at a scale. What is that? Uh, by the time we return from append, everything is back in order because we can control access to visibility of bad states. I removed the phrase, but I did not connect the sentences together. Okay, fine. I think I have read this comment. I understand you are coming from, but it seems like band-aid for the poor design. What was that? Uh, it would be a great idea to identify and document the whole program invariant in some central location so maintainers will know to uphold it and that they can rely on it. Mm, this could be useful for practice for legacy systems where refactoring is costly, but I think the goal should be to design systems with local invariants. Of course, that's the whole point of the next section. I did not say it's the best idea that is coming in a very next sentence. I feel like you are picking nits, taking one phrase completely out of context. That's fine. Would it help if I move the sentence after following heading and change great to good? Yes, that would help. Yeah, fine. I think I have gone through this discussion, right? Mm, I've gone through many of this discussion now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the conclusion is acceptable, but I have two complaints. It's longer than needed. If I could distill the key points of the chapter into few paragraphs, that would be great. Some of the wording, like what I have highlighted above, seems fluffy and bit exaggerated. I would suggest cutting down to this kind of statement. Camus, I agree it's too long, fluffy, and exaggerated. What did you highlight? Programming by contract is not uh, just about writing better software. It's about becoming a better programmer. I think it is true. I think it is true. Okay, it might be exaggerating. It might be exaggerating, but this is true. Programming by contract is not just about writing better software. It's about becoming a better programmer. So, okay, Nick DeMarco, I would love that. Would be mm, relevant because sort is a separate component with its own name. If we had injected the sorting implementation directly into our code, we'd have to reason about all of its detail, and we'd need a comment to tell us that implementation was sorting the elements. Would we? That's probably true if you are already accepted design by contract ethos. But at the point in the narrative, I am not sure we have. If we have already reasoned about all of its details, we w- would we actually need a comment to tell us what it's doing? We only need a comment to know if its behavior is correct. We absolutely would need such a comment because sorting is complicated and you need a hint before reasoning to help you understand what you are looking at. We would have to reason about all of its details is something we would have to do each time we maintain the enclosing function. Maybe I should have said into a client function or something. In fact, the comment in the code that say now we are doing X are usually a good hint that you should be breaking X into another component. I should mention that. Sorry, I did not mean to be pedantic. What is pedantic meaning? Pedantic. Too worried about rules or details. Okay. Uh, but even if sorting is complicated, you would already stated we have reasoned about all of its details. What does it mean to reason about all details if not to understand a yes complicated piece of code? In practice, I hear you that a comment would be helpful, but the sentence as written I hear as a contradiction. Does this make sense? Okay. So seems to be imply the following consequence of former, but I'm not sure it is. We can just say I. It's a common file. I see that. Okay. How can you know whether your program is correct? Validating correctness really require formal proof. Everyday programming judgment suffices. Okay. Is that change from seldom to rarely intentional? Uh, I will take removal of an elaborate good idea. To me, everyday programming judgment sounds a little too forced, like it's supposed to be technical term. Also, I think a position of seldom and usually is important because it is not always thoughts. Ping. Okay, this is a ping. Nice. Heard on seldom. I do not feel strongly. I agree on a position with usually. Uh, I think everyday thinking that we do while programming is a bit wordy, and I just tried to crack that nut. I think my session is better, but may be not perfect. I can next sort of. Okay, fine. Okay, so I should change. Oh, with our, do you mean STLabs? What? Do not just. Oh my goodness. I have scrolled a lot down, and if somehow it would not come back to where I wanted it to be, it would be so bad. Come on, please get to the state where I wanted it to be. No, it did not. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. I will take a 2 minutes break and then I would do the rest of the review. Okay, uh, now let's try to continue what we have. hmm So I covered all of it, right? I covered this one also. What about this one? Yeah, this was covered. What about this one? this was covered. I'm in industry, I think. I might drop programming as well. Okay, with our did you mean ST labs or in or the industries? Okay, that's fine. Uh, n- I think the colon implies the archer should be cite itself, not the prepositional phrase. I do not think I understand, Nick, but please see the change I am making here, visible in few minutes. Oh my goodness. Wow. Consistency. Does use site have a hyphen or not? Good catch, not in this context. Only when used as an adjective, as in use site code. Nice. This is a little bit grammatical, I guess. I do not understand it. Surely we mean given two valid whole triples, if the post condition of the first are precondition of the second, we can now validate a triple describing given a two whole triple if the post condition of the first are a superset of precondition of the second, we can form a valid triple. Yeah, actually I always thought of the same, that if the post condition of the first are superset of the precondition of the second. Why? I actually thought exactly like surely we mean this, and he says no. And wow, this is what I always thought. And yeah, this might not be really necessary while reasoning. Like this is what I use in reasoning, and you do not need that level of formalism. But let's see. No, I meant what I wrote. I oh my goodness, this guy is really great. Wow, he's a legend. Let's see what he describes. You could get there by saying if P, the precondition P, S implies precondition Q implies P, S, and Q prime, where Q prime is a subset of Q, which is a subset of consequence rule. I'm trying to keep the logic step as simple as possible and just describing the rule of composition. As soon as you bring the other step to visual complexity of math, will start overwhelming the value of its meaning for many people. Okay, okay, so he agrees that you can get there by saying that okay, P, okay, S with the precondition P, evaluation of S implies Q. This whole thing implies with the precondition P, evaluating S implies Q prime if Q prime is a subset of Q, because Q prime is a weaker thing, or is a subset, at least it's a subset. Okay, okay, maybe I'm not getting the logic, but the English above is just strong, isn't it? If the post condition of the first are precondition second, but the second could have precondition which uh, exceed the post condition of the first. In such case, if uh, above is satisfied, but it could be an invalid invocation, at least I think we need to say if post condition of the first are the precondition of the second to imply that they are the same set, right? Or am I totally missing something here? Oh yes, the is missing. Okay, very good catch. Wow, they are really precise. Wow, I got a big fan of Nick DiMarco. I have to say. I hope he doesn't watch the start of the video because I just mispronounced his name. And yeah, I think uh, we need a concrete example of composition here. Maybe we can revisit sorted names example from before. As written, it's hard to feel confident that I understand what I need about this new way of thinking, since it's not grounded in an old way of thinking. How does this strike you? I can mention that this calculation is performed by binary search and say that whole logic demonstrate that property of A comes before B is preserved. I can then refer back it as an example of invariant where I bring those up. I think it might just be GitHub formatting, but I'm not quite following what this composition is trying to show. Okay, C is B minus A by 2, and for C is greater or equal to 0, and C is greater or equal to B equal to A plus C, A is less than B, implies let C is B minus 2, B equal to A plus C. Okay, wow, I am really fixing to make my point, failing to make my point. Oh, GitHub styling buttons do not do the right thing to the markdown. Now fixed. If that did not help, take these two independent lines of code. Let C equal to B minus A by 2, and if C is B minus A by 2 and B is A plus C, now let's write a valid whole triple for each operation. Let C is A minus B by 2. The precondition is A is smaller equal to B, and post condition is C is greater than 0. Okay. Uh, okay. If the precondition is A is less than equal to B, then the post condition is C is greater than equal to 0. B equal to A plus C, the precondition is C is greater than 0, then the post condition would be A is less than equal to B. That makes sense in the whole notation. Uh, this is what that means. The fact that precondition of the second is the post condition of the first means the sequencing these operations can have post condition of the second and the precondition of the first. That's the composition rule that tells us whether if we enter the pair of operations, what the condition is preserved by the pair. Nice. I love that. Mm, dash is as correct in this position as a colon. Mm, dash slightly lose a connection which was intentional. There might be reasons to change it though, but if you suggest a change like this, I think you should explain why. Okay, fine. Is this referring to implementation of the component or the implementation of the platform, trapping behaviors, etc.? The post condition omits and anything that is purely a defect of particular implementation. Such as what happens if invalid call. Okay, either one. Not sure whether that's something I actually need to clarify. A trapping behavior, after all, be a result of invalid call. Care to say more about why the question came up for you? I think artifact of particular implementation is broad and vague enough to confuse readers, specifically make them wonder about irrelevant things here, like trapping behaviors. I think you just mean to say anything not specified in the contract. I suppose I was wondering what counts as an artifact. Can we just say the post condition omits any consequence not guaranteed by contract, such as what happens when invalid code is made? Agree about the language. That's almost tautological. I'm really trying to say post condition specifies what only things you actually intend the function to do when invoked correctly. It omits details such as I do not know how to say this economically for the book, the order of items, the second part of the first result of a partition coordinate is not stable, or the behavior when invoked incorrectly. Wow. Yeah. Now I think I have actually reviewed all the interesting parts, and now I'm going through bookish language things. That is also fine, but yeah, the debates with David Senkel were worth reading, and yeah, let's see if I can finish it fast because now I'm tired. Does user define add anything add here? Implementation defined types can have anything. Interesting question. Implementation defined types do not have private parts in any observable way though. Now it's possible private parts is also superfluous. What do you think? Another place where implementation may have at confusion, clearly STD types have private part and they are not user defined, or is the standard library a user of the language in this case? I do not think private parts are superfluous, but I think user defined is, but a type without visual private parts can still have invariants. I have to mix both of them together. Those qualifiers. Okay, making a connection explicitly. I like a session. The active party is always the client except in callbacks. How do you say to make a connection? What is a session? A type public API boundary. A type interacts with its clients when we talk about instance in a good state. A type a client interacts with it when we talk about in a good state. Okay. Style. Are we using first person anywhere else in the book? I have been thinking it's we or our, but I understand why you said my here. Good catch. It's leftover from what text was script for a talk. Okay. Oh, wow, nice. These are obviously stated in Swift specific terminology. I wonder if some acknowledgement that other languages have equivalent construct would be useful. Related private set is mostly meaningless to a non-Swift programmer. Okay, I wonder if it's adding any real value. I assume it was added for completeness, but that completeness might be coming at an expense of clarity for users of other languages. Uh, this now the discussion is going really now in the direction of how books should be, and the discussions I was interested in was really how code should be. So yeah, but good question. But this will come up again. I do not think we want to repeat it throughout the book. I suggest you to look into at the intro chapter and see if there is an appropriate way to express what you mean that fits. If not, maybe it's not that important. Yes, private set is for completeness. We are going to complete list of rules. Swift is not, and I am, in my opinion, we are going to have announced a rushed version of this book very shortly after it comes out. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, so will we are going to have a rushed version of this book also. That is so nice. Good suggestion. Can do. Okay, nice, 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 nice. I am liking it. I am liking where it is going. Okay. We have only used a quite a few terms to express the idea of invariant on the offstate does not okay disturb the invariant. Okay, does not held unset the value to breaks unless a diverse vocabulary is adding something. I would suggest using at most two of these consistently. I do not know. I think it can be useful for people to be exposed to different ways of describing a thing. Is there a reason you think I should stick to two? I want to register for its connotations, but I could be convinced otherwise. The two was mostly arbitrary. One felt too constraining. Three felt needlessly variable. Okay, nice, nice, nice. Uh, I agree that things need to be stated many times to get learning across, but I think consistency here helps us plant a flag in vocabulary space and coin the correct phrasing. What happens to invariants inside a method? What does disturb get you breaks does not. Uh, okay, the source here. What is that? Hmm. Since we use lift to mean something in generic programming, I would say we remove here or something similar. We can remove the precondition entirely and normalize the internal. I don't know why, but two syllabus feels like too much. How about this? Going with remove, it's less esoteric. Okay, nice. Hmm. I think this is too strong of a claim. Undocumented software is neither correct nor incorrect. It does something, but it does it. Uh, and too fundamental to be BC philosophy to make in a such a cheeky, for lack of better term, to one like it or not, seems to take an adverse uh, adversarial stance, assuming the reader is anti-documentation, which is a bit off-putting. And even if they are, I worry this tone would make them subconsciously dig in their heels. I also think that this deserves an example, perhaps even a callback to design space around pair array API, so we can show the reader firsthand that evaluating the correctness of undocumented components is impossible uh, task. I appreciate this is general feedback without a concrete session. Let me know if you want to workshop this. I do not know what claim you are saying is too strong or what thing I should say instead. I agree with your criticism of the tone. As for example, I do not understand how anyone can demonstrate evaluating correctness is impossible without documentation. Where would you even start in trying to evaluate correctness? If we write the example without dogs, uh, That would be first thing we would confront. Okay. Oh, I am totally. Hmm. Mm-hmm. I agonized it, but I like the original vibe. But ultimately, I like the slang and emotions. I could left for talk script. Okay. Just a thought. I don't feel strongly about this. Okay. I think this from Dave. Uh, does implementer really add something here? Yeah. No, in fact, it's almost wrong. Nice. Is it useful to say why we know it's a sequence of elements? I don't know. As you can see, it removes the returns last element. Notice the phrase last element is meaningful. Only we document dynamic array is a collection, which we know is a sequence of elements. I don't think so. I think it should have been more relevant to say if I had written collection, but I didn't rather purposely. The normal meaning of word collection for programmer might be sufficient. Now I am starting to doubt myself. Some people think a bag is a collection, but I also think it's too much elaboration is unhelpful. I think we should get to other eyes on this question. uh, in a chapter so focused on why we know the things we know, a phrase like which we know feels like it demands some justification. I would not just rely on conventional uses of words. The Swift API guidelines say anything about how to use English words with widely accepted definitions. Okay, I think we are on the end of the stream. In the first place, you want to say documentation part of method. Clarifying the other may resolve some of the discussion between you and Cameo regarding contracts tells us where bug is. The first place is the one you and Cameo are suggesting I remove. It should not be said redundantly, but we need to decide it's unimportant or find right place for it. Yeah, as I said, in the other side, I think it needs to be made earlier, right after things with relationships. Okay. Mm-hmm. I am skeptical about the value of this observation for the reader at this point of time, especially since it requires reading Swift code with a few unusual tokens. Uh, if we view strict weak ordering as a generalization of this, the corresponding generalization is called total pre-order. In fact, we can convert total pre-order to corresponding. Okay, I see now you depend on this observation to make a later point. I think you might have signed yourself up for a slightly longer explanation of route of pre-order and strict weak orders. I thought I masterfully covered what was needed with footnote and was trying to avoid writing more. Have you read my article on this? Wait for it to load. There is some article on this. Is there a particular part of you want to answer? Yeah. I am waiting for it to load. Okay. Order, I say. Wow. Uh, I don't know what it is. This article seems interesting, and I would go through the whole thing. I would go through the whole thing. Okay, nice. Okay. I don't think changing the merits uh, blocking the PR. I will resolve for now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this may be a bigger discussion, but should not be satin, strung, and white here. What exactly is the use of case of these links? Here's bigger discussion. I thought about these things and came to no conclusion. We should cite strung and white somehow. I did assume that when people will read this as an ebook or the like and links will be useful. Okay. S- In the context of self, we can drops of self. This improvement was available to us along and may seem trivial, but the value of omitting needless words. Okay, I do not know what is this thing. I want to know. I think I should actually. Yeah, this is something I should also read for streaming, right? Omitting needless words. Mm-hmm. Mm, do we ever get to that promised example? Double check. I acknowledge my okay, nice. Uh, yeah, I have read this, right? Hmm. Okay, yeah. As promised, yeah, this was so big of a stream, but yeah, now I'm fully exhausted. But anyways, I was able to complete this whole thing, uh, and I can try not today, but even not tomorrow. After some days, I want to read the whole book, right? So that at least the whole chapter, I should say, so that I get the latest things from the chapter. I am aware of all these debates in the thing, so yeah, it is even better for me to read the chapter. So I would read the chapter going forward, and yeah, that's all. Like that's all I had. Um, Something I want to react is this article by Dave, and I would um go through this article maybe someday later, or maybe not even on stream. I do not know. Anyways, yeah, I am really tired now, and this was great. I think everyone should read this book and better code and this contract chapter, because currently it only has contract chapter. And once this book comes out, I think it would be really great read for everyone else. So yeah, till then I am done, and it's 2:26 a.m. here, and that's big for me. Shubhratri, Jai Shri Ram. Bye bye.